Where We're From highlights the rich textures, histories, and experiences of the Asian, Pacific Islander, and Desi American community. Each episode is produced by students at San Jose State University.
Welcome to Listen Up Asians in America.
My name is Kiki.
I'm Justin.
I'm Julie.
I'm Artyom.
And I'm Jessica. This episode, as a group, we will be interviewing Julia about a respective topic of Awkwafina. A preview of Julia's opinion would include her perspective on Awkwafina's work.
Our special guest today is Julia Casio, who is also a student enrolled in Dr. Rondelia's course, Asian American Studies at San Jose State University.
So Julia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Julia. My major is marine bio. I'm a second year. And fun fact about myself, I played soccer for 14 years and I'm left-handed.
Wow, 14 years? That's a long time. I used to play soccer as well. However, when I got up to middle school, I stopped. So what type of positions do you play in soccer?
So I basically just played forward. So I would be center, right, left, whatever's just attacking. And then also attacking midfield.
As an Asian American, how would you identify yourself in our community?
So I'm a first generation Filipino American and I like girls.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm actually a first generation college student in my family as well.
Do you guys ever feel any pressure being the first generation in your families?
Yeah, I definitely do a little.
Same, I agree, since I would be the first to finish at a university.
To continue on with the interview, our podcast has been about the sensational actress, comedian, and rapper Awkwafina. She talks loudly so that her opinions are heard. She is also not like most Asian Americans you would see on social media or in the entertainment business. The way she was able to create her platform helped her break the stereotypes she had learned growing up.
When was the first time you ever heard of Awkwafina?
I would say the first time I ever heard of Awkwafina was when I watched the movie Ocean's 8 and Raya and the Last Dragon. I know she has an album out, but I've never really listened to any of her music.
People have said before that Awkwafina talks with a black accent. Some also believe since she did grow up in the Bronx, that's why she developed said accent. What's your opinion on that? Do you believe that where you grew up has an effect on your identity as well?
I think that an accent comes from a neighborhood. So basically where you grew up. If you're saying Awkwafina has a black accent, then you're just assuming that she's being something that she is not. People need to start to realize that Asian Americans do also grow up in rough neighborhoods. And for your second question, I would say I grew up in Hawthorne and Torrance, which are cities in SoCal. The majority of my youth was spent in Hawthorne, but during high school, I lived in Torrance. So while in Hawthorne, the majority of the population was Latinx and Black people with a splash of Asians. So I've never really thought of my Asian American identity in general since I did not know much about other Asian cultures outside of my family. However, when I went to high school, that is when I became more aware of my Asian identity because I was surrounded by more Asians and it made me more self-aware about other Asian cultures.
I totally understand what you're talking about. I grew up moving around different cities and experiencing cultural differences from Black, Latinx, Hispanic, Southeast Asian, Indians, and more. This helped me shape my perspective on other people, and it made me learn not to judge so quickly on a person's appearance.
I completely agree, and also think that the way we're raised and the people we surround ourselves with influence our identity and the way we talk. Being raised and grown up in Oakland most of my life, I was constantly surrounded by Black and Hispanic people, so I eventually adapted to the way they talk to morph into the culture. Some may call this cultural appropriation, But I think it's far from that because in Aquafina's situation, she's just being herself without mocking or hurting other cultures.
So Julia, I remember you said you were a first-generation college student in your family. Does that mean your parents have immigrated to the United States before or after you were born?
So my parents immigrated to the US before I was born. My dad actually came first, and then he sponsored my mom. And she was actually pregnant with my oldest brother when she came to the US. And we've lived in SoCal ever since.
I think you're pretty lucky in this regard since you didn't have to struggle with learning English and adapting to the US education system.
Did your parents ever hold any expectations against you? And if they did you follow through with those said expectations?
So my mom actually wanted me to become a dentist since she is actually a dental assistant, but I do not want to work with people and like with their teeth. So that's a no for me. Also, another expectation would be like my parents have called me their last hope because my brothers have had a difficult time during college. So they're trying to set their expectations onto me now. I hope I do follow through with some of my parents' expectations, but it's still early to tell.
I actually wanted to be a dentist as a child but as the years went by, I decided that this wouldn't be such a great idea for a person like me. So, in a way, did you break off and create your own path, like how we explained to you Aquafina has done?
I think on some level, I have broken off and created my own path. If you would compare to me and my brothers, I would say that I created my own path from them. This is due to like my major is marine biology, and I do plan to stick with it and graduate with this degree. Compared to my brothers, they actually never really finished with the major they started out with.
Oh wow, that's a really cool major. I rarely ever meet Asian Americans who major in marine biology. I find it really cool how you are branching out and breaking off from the traditional career paths that can be found among many Asian American students. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to share your story with us. Thank you for participating in our podcast, and we hope that everything goes well for you in the future.
Everyone has their own unique stories. After hearing out Julia's personal story, what could you say about your own story? When people ask about your identity, what would you reply with?
Thank you for listening to Where We're From. This podcast is produced by students enrolled in Dr. Joanne Rondilla's Asian American Studies courses at San Jose State University.